First guest on the third Tuesday of each month is a 2015 Barbecue Hall of Fame inductee, a TV show host, a barbecue cooking class instructor, a multiple-time author, and you see him here on the third Tuesday of every month. We race to the hotline and welcome in Stephen Raichlen. Stephen, how are you, buddy?
Doing great, Greg. How about you?
I am absolutely fabulous, Stephen. Appreciate the time, as always. You are not via Skype, which means you're traveling, so where do we find you in this great country?
So I am on the Tamiami Trail between Naples, Florida, and Miami.
All right, Tamiami Trail. That's a pretty big trail, if I come to understand. Any cool places along the stops?
Well, lots of alligators along the way, and Indian villages, an airboat ride, and so.
Are you a big fan of eating alligator? Is that something that you've partaken in and enjoy?
I have eaten alligator. I can't say it's just enough meat, so I really crave it. The other thing we have down here that's great are frog legs, and I would go out of my way to eat a Florida frog leg.
How do you prepare that? What do you find to be the best way?
So, as you can imagine, the way I prepare them is with curry butter and grilled. The most traditional way to eat frog legs down here is deep fried.
I've heard through many of the generic stereotypes that frog legs are somewhat akin to chicken. Would you place them in that same category?
Yeah, I would. Chicken leaning toward rabbit.
Let me ask you a question before we get into some of the other topics that we had kind of game planned for this evening. And I don't know if you can answer it, but this is something that just popped up today. I was going back and forth with a few of my inner circle members who was at a restaurant, and he had a dry-aged steak, but it was a little bit different than the norm. They first dry-aged the beef, and then, after whatever the designated period of time of dry aging, they wet-aged it for another portion of time. Is this something that you've heard of before?
I've never heard of that before. And I'm not quite sure I'd understand what the advantage of that would be.
If I recall correctly, and my memory is shoddy at best, the way it was explained to my pal Doug was that it was dry-aged first, then wet-aged secondarily in order to maintain more of the moisture. But I would imagine if you're going for a dry age, you're willing to sacrifice the moisture loss for a more robust flavor, if you will.
Yeah, but water has enough flavors. The more you can evaporate, the more intense the flavor is going to be by itself. But I'm sure your friends put thought into that secondary wet age. Until I taste it, I don't know, so keep an open mind.
There is a steak joint here in Cleveland that does the opposite. They wet age for 20 days, which makes sense. I mean, a lot of these things are coming in some type of a cryovac, I would imagine. So you let it hang out there for 20 days or whatever, then they take it out, they dry age it for another 20 days. Now, personally, I would rather have that dry aging process be more than 20, at least 30, maybe into the 40, 50-day range. So that makes a little bit more sense, but the opposite is still a little mind-boggling to me.
Right. I guess for me, the bottom line is what's exciting is when I was growing up, a steak was a steak was a steak, and now there are so many variations. People are pushing the envelope in so many different directions that, it's a really exciting time to be a griller and an eater.
Steve, let me ask you and I'm going to ask you to speculate over the general population just to make sure that I'm kind of understanding where your mindset might be at. I believe at this point, and maybe over the last 3 or 4 years, that the consumer has never been closer to the source of where beef is coming from. But I've heard divergent views saying, well, while there is access or while there is an ability for a consumer, if they're interested, to track down all the way back, if you will, like grape varietals with wine, the vast majority have become completely inactive or unmotivated to find that out, and it's worse than it ever has been, even 30 or 40 years ago. Do you agree with that?
I think we are a schizophrenic nation, a schizophrenic culture, and I think that there's a sort of a an elite group, but subpopulation that is very concerned where food comes from, that wants to know the pedigree, that insists on organic, grass-fed, heirloom varieties, heritage varieties. They cost more money. There is no doubt about that. And then there are, kind of the mass consumer that maybe is more concerned with price. It's funny, and I was talking with my wife about this the other day. There's a new business that opened in Miami that calls itself Wild Food. And we went in this thing, and this place is like a giant frozen TV dinner. Every single item in the store is frozen. And despite the moniker Wild, everything is just industrial beef, industrial lamb, sold frozen. It is the most antithetical to the way I shop and the way I think about food. So that's sort of another extreme. I don't know what prompted a business like that, and I have no idea what its prospects for success are. But if it succeeds, I'll be pretty depressed.
Stephen Raichlen joining me here on the show, barbecuebible.com, his website. Stephen, let's go ahead and talk about the 2019 edition of Barbecue University. We kind of talk about it each and every year, kind of a lead up before you have it, and then we like to recap it after the fact. So what are you looking at from a curriculum standpoint, and is there anything that is going to be changing from a trend standpoint that you're going to be doing there?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, before Barbecue University comes, we're getting ready for the next Stephen Reichlen's Project Fire TV show, which we're taping in March in northern Florida. So we're going to be looking at this show will have a much more of a tropical cast, a Gulf of Mexico cast than my previous shows, and I'm really excited about that. The shows that we've got lined up for the new series very much align with books I've written or working on. I've got Brisket Chronicles coming out in April, and so one show is Brisket 24/7. We're going to do sort of a crash immersive course in brisket, including, by the way, a brisket that you can cook in 2 minutes. It's Korean style, so that's pretty interesting. Another show I've got coming up is called Grilling Green, and it's actually a meatless show. There's been so much just exploding interest in green grilling and vegetarian grilling, and this will carry over to Barbecue University 2019 as well.
Couple follow-up questions on that, Stephen. From a location standpoint, haven't the last couple seasons been in California?
They have been, yeah. So we try and jump around. We've been in southern Arizona. We were in southern California. Although we've taped in Arizona, and now we'll be taping in northwestern Florida. So for me, it's fun. It's a different background, different local foods, local specialties. I know we'll be doing a lot with Gulf seafood in this show. Funny, everybody knows Nancy. I was just on the phone with Nancy, and we're trying to line up a source for fresh hearts of palm because that's a Floridian specialty. Tropical fruits from the Redlands.
What about stone crab? Is that in season?
A stone crab is in season, and I'm sure the crew is going to be feasting on stone crab. I'm not convinced that grilling is the best way to cook it, although, I wouldn't be surprised if we try smoking it.
A follow-up to the green grilling thing that you had mentioned, if I remember correctly, your daughter is a dietitian, right?
Not only is she a dietitian, but she's the dietitian for the Miami Heat basketball team.
Okay, well, even better. So have you had a conversation with her in regards to the influx or more widely available plant-based proteins, specifically those things like the Impossible Burger or the things that look like meat and taste like meat, act like meat? But when you start to break down what's in them and what the calorie count looks like, is she a fan of that, or is she a little bit more on the schneid?
Well, I think she, like I, first of all, she is virtually a vegetarian. which is, talk about a strange thing to happen in a family of, a griller like myself.
Right.
But I think for both of us, this sort of two very big philosophical questions. And one is, if you were eating a meatless diet and grilling meatless, as it were, grilling green, do you want to celebrate plant foods for being plant foods and the flavors they have and the textures and the unique qualities they have? Or do you want to kind of replicate the meat experience with plant-based ingredients? And I think we both kind of come down more on the side of trying to celebrate plant foods for their unique qualities. Sure.
Stephen Raichlen joining me here on the show, barbecuebible.com, his website, talking about Project Fire 2 coming up, obviously Barbecue University. For the folks that are interested in taking a look at Barbecue University, obviously it's set in a very majestic place. It's not cheap by any stretch, but if you're looking to make a special weekend out of it, or you both have some live fire, maybe you're bringing a buddy or whatever, how do you sign up for that?
Well, visit barbecuebible.com and click on About Stephen, then Barbecue University. That'll send you to a link. Or you can call the Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado Springs. That's where we hold the school. And, you get sign-up information there. It's a pretty intense program, 3 days of barbecuing and grilling. And you asked what's new earlier. One thing that's always new for us is we always get new grills, new smokers, new techniques. Every year the menus are different. And only thing that's not different is we get a lot of repeat students. So it's certainly one of the high points of my year.
Are you surprised that you have, do you have any idea what percentage of students that you get every year are repeats? Is it 50% or 30% or more than 50?
No, it's not quite that high. I would say it's about 15%.
Do the people that have been there more than once, maybe it's their third time, maybe it's their fourth time, do you find that they are very quick to volunteer, or is it a pretty well-mixed noobs, intermediates, and experts that are hands-on?
I try and plan every menu with a few rudimentary dishes for beginners, a few complicated dishes, more complex dishes for more experienced people. And, certainly our alums definitely enjoy the role of helping the newbies, showing them the ropes of how the school works.
Stephen, let's switch gears real quick here. We've been following how your newest book, The Brisket Chronicles, are going through the process here. So bring us up to speed on where the book's at right now.
Well, the book is at the printers, and if you are an author, there are a few things more delightful than having the book finally off your desk when you can make no more changes or revisions, and at the printer when it's actually going to be turned into a book. So what are we now? We're toward the end of February. I'll probably have my first bound copy in about 2 weeks. The book will ship in April, and then I'll start touring at the beginning of May.
Do you have a tour schedule of cities planned out yet?
I do, and it's on barbecuebible.com. We're launching the tour in Austin, Texas, which feels very appropriate for a brisket book. Let's see, I'll be in, we've got Texas, I'll be in Chicago, I'll be in Kansas City, we will be in Tennessee, Atlanta, Miami, Boston, so New York City. I think we're launching the book on the Today Show, so it's a pretty typical, Stephen Raichlen Workman tour. The other thing that's really fun is I'm teaching a set of master classes in Turin, Italy, the 21st and 22nd of June. Now, you may remember from previous conversations, I have a TV show on the Italian Food Network called Stephen Raichlen Grills Italy. So this is a barbecue store and school called Barbecue Paradise in Turin, Italy. I'm sure you have a few followers from Italy. Italians are just grill crazy, barbecue crazy these days. So I'm really looking forward to that experience too.
Stephen, I don't want to take you to task here in front of all the Centralites, but I believe the last time we talked about a book tour, there was a Cleveland, Ohio mentioned in there by you. What happened?
Yeah, well, it's not on the schedule yet, but the schedule is a work in practice. note to self, call the publicist, chew her out and tell her to send me to Cleveland.
Maybe you said, hey, let's stop in Cleveland, and they were like, did you just say Cleveland? No. We're going to send you right past Cleveland and go into Chicago or some other real city. I think that's probably more or less what happened. I know you want to be here. I know you want to be here.
I'll get there. Don't worry.
Stephen Raichlen joining me here on the show, talking about the book, The Brisket Chronicles. So the book is off the desk. It's going to be out April. Are you already thinking about a new book, or are you already constructing a new book?
I'm already working on a new book.
Wow.
I'm actually working on a couple books. The first one, there may be a grilling green book in the works. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually working on another project that may be surprising for people, but, in Venice, there is a kind of tapas that's called cicchetti, and they're served at these wonderful Venetian wine bars, which are about the last place when you can actually meet a real Venetian, with the wave of tourism that's in Venice.
Sure.
So I'm working on a project on Venetian wine bar food, and I've got a story on that coming out in the travel section of the New York Times in a couple weeks. So that's sort of an unexpected interest that has nothing to do with grilling, but everything to do with great flavor.
What kind of a food is it? Is there a genre for it?
So imagine tapas, and it's everything from a myriad of different kinds of meatballs to open-faced sandwiches to panini to interesting salads, interesting seafood. It's extremely varied. If any of your listeners are going to Venice, it's a very inexpensive but explosively flavorful and extremely colorful, picturesque way to eat. And like I said, when you go to a Venetian wine bar, you'll be with Venetians. You won't just be with tourists.
Stephen, last question before I let you go, and I appreciate the time as always. Over the last 3, 4, 5 years, the competitive steak world, regardless of sanctioning body, has been exploding in popularity. Is that something, if you were around it or it was down in Florida or Martha's Vineyard, depending on where you're at over the course of that particular season, is that something that you would throw a couple $100 down and take part in a steak contest, or no?
Well, I would certainly love to observe it and especially taste the fruits of it. I don't really do competing. I've always been kind of more of a reporter and doing field work and reporting on what people are doing in that field rather than actually competing myself. But I find it a fascinating phenomenon. And speaking of Italy, actually, they have really gotten into American-style competition barbecue. Mm-hmm. They have sanctioned contests. And, this is an export that is really finding a home all over the world.
Stephen Raichlen from BBQ Bible joining me here on the show, the website bbqbible.com, and he is on the Tamiami Trail and you were heading to Miami, correct?
Heading back to Miami. All right. The third Tuesday of the month, you find him here. You can find him at bbqbible.com anytime else. Stephen, always appreciate the time. Thanks so much. Great speaking with you. There he is. He's a Barbecue Hall of Famer if you need him. Stephen Raichlen. Yeah. Third Tuesday of the month right here on this show.